it was one reader of 75. All of those 75 readers contain high-frequency te reo words. The issue was one around what we call scope and sequence. It's essentially when you are teaching a 5-year-old to learn to read English, you do it in a certain way. You build up sound after sound and then combination of sounds in a structured way. English is already difficult as it is, and there are a number of words that don't follow the rules you have to remember, so they're called heart words. And when you add te reo words in, they also have to be remembered as heart words, memorising the whole word because they don't follow the same vowel sounds. And so that particular book didn't fit with the scope and sequence of all the books, and so we've sent it out to every school as a big book. It's you know, I think the right thing to do. But what I would note at the same time as we've done this, we've also created that exact same resource for the first time ever in te reo Māori. We've never had a set of books for learning to read te reo in a structured, decodable way. We created those and they're available to use not only for Māori medium kura kaupapa, but also for the mainstream.
So she talks about scope and sequence. She talks about English words not following the rules. Like we can go through that. And she says because Māori words don't follow those same rules with these early learners, it's easier to not have them in there so they can learn to read. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's so much, there's so much going on that in that little clip there. But I think we're also hearing different reports, not particular to that report there about, that's one example, but we've heard of others, so it might be a part of a wider issue. I think the issue is really about where the underlying beliefs are coming from, because we do have a very strong monolingual kind of push and a historical context in this country, and kind of if we unpack the arguments that they're making here, they actually don't really stack up against all of the literature. And, if you look at international schools, I used to teach in Japan, and kids would just pick up languages, we would play with language, we would use English and Japanese, and we've got bilingual kids. They just don't struggle. They can start to recognize, and particularly you're talking about a book with 6 words, for goodness sakes. So this is a really, it just seems quite petty, to be honest, at the minor end. And then when you're making decisions about, a whole suite of kids, this is the first year of a primary school curriculum. So when you do the count, it just doesn't really stack up. And, they've also got this government goal of having 1 million speakers by 2040, people who can understand te reo Māori and use te reo Māori. And one of the goals as part of that 1 million is 150,000 Māori who are under the age of 15, who they want to be able to speak 50-50 Māori. So, they're actually kind of negating their own self-set goals by doing these kinds of things. So, I think if we go back to the idea of, translanguaging is just a proven theory that you can play with language, you can, I think they've gone with this, with that sequencing model. But we've actually seen, Waikato University have got researchers working there that have said it's not an issue. We've also heard from Canterbury University who have done other research. Some of my colleagues like Dr. Vinnie Olsen-Reeder and Dr. Corinne Seals, they've done translanguaging research with children in Punareo. And this is both Pākehā students and Māori students. They can handle languages much more easily than I think a lot of our older kind of people that are probably around these decision-making tables have been exposed to language. Like, our kids, our generation, they just are far more likely to see te reo Māori around in ways that perhaps older generations who may have a little bit of fear or anxiety around how languages work, that's perhaps informing some of their own decision makings and all of this kind of, what they like to call unconscious bias. Other people would have less polite terms about, what's actually going on there. And so I'll leave that to both of you to put into those words. But as as somebody that needs to be a bit tidier with my language, I think it's not great.
Chewie, I think she's saying we're a bit rude with our words. Hey, just one clarity for people watching: translanguaging, meaning moving between multiple languages, is just a definition of that. Translanguaging.
Yeah. It's just a fancy term, really, just for, when people who understand multiple languages or two languages or more, they kind of play with languages. So that's where, you might say a word in one language from another language. And it's kind of also about identity and positioning. And so, like if you go overseas, for instance, and you're with other Kiwis, you might use Māori words to signify that you're different from other kind of international groups. And that's, I see Pākehās do that all the time when we're overseas. We will use language that is familiar to us, and Māori words are a sure point of helping to create the distinction between kind of other Westerner groups and that kind of thing. But I think it's also about, the national identity of kids and Pākehā kids as well. So it's like if they can see what Māori language is in their books, that kind of gives them a bit of an understanding, so that they don't feel so kind of left out of, imagine kind of being 6 and you can't recognize very basic words. That's also, like, we need to have confidence in our kids that they can kind of come up with, deal with more than one language.